Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Very excited to have my next speaker on the show, or next guest on the show. I was thinking what he does. You probably have seen him. If you haven't, you have to check out his TED Talks. He is Frank King. He spent a long time in the entertainment industry. Again, he's done many TEDx talks, very popular out there. He's on the show to talk about mental health. Frank, thank you for being here, sir.
It's part of a plea bargain. I really didn't have any choice, Patrick. It was
part of your
on the highway.
Part of your probation is you have to appear on podcasts. You knew that the judge talked to you about this, Frank, before you came on the show. You know that.
Yeah, he said, "Look, pick up trash on the weekends along the highway, or do Patrick's show." Okay, fine.
So, Frank, tell the listener a little bit about your background. I hit some of the highlights at the beginning. I mean, you worked in the entertainment industry. You worked as a writer on many famous shows you can talk about, and how you ended up in the place you are, helping people get TED Talks, like we talked about a little bit, but actually becoming a very, very popular speaker out there. How did you explain the pathway to this, brother?
Well, it starts in the 4th grade. I'm 9 years old. I tell my first joke. Kids laugh. Teacher was hysterical. She was laughing so hard she had to excuse herself to go to the teacher's lounge. Yeah. And I thought, at 9 years old, I'm going to be a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
At 12th grade, after 3 years of drama, getting no parts, no speaking roles, I'm beginning to see a pattern. So I thought, you know what? If I do stand-up, I can write, produce, direct, and star in my own little show every night. And there was a talent show, second semester, senior year. And I went on, I won. Of course, I beat an accordion player and folk dancer. It's not a big victory, but it's like beating the French. Who cares? Do you know this? That Cinco de Mayo is the day they're celebrating, I guess, Mexico beating France. Oh, come on. Who hasn't beaten France? Anyway, after 12th grade, I said to my mother, I'm going to be a comedian. She said, "You're going to college first. I don't care what you do when you get done. You can be a goat herder for all I care, but you're going to be a goat herder with a college degree." So I went to UNC Chapel Hill, got a couple of degrees, then bolted for the West Coast. Did my first open mic night, April 1st, 1984. Halfway through my set, I heard a voice in my head, "You're home."
So you found your place.
Second thought was, I'm gonna do this for a living. Had no idea how. 18 months later, said to my girlfriend, now my wife of 35 years, "I'm going on the road to be a stand-up comedian. You want to come along for the ride?" Figuring she'd go, "Oh, hell no." She goes, "Yeah." So we gave up our jobs in our apartment, and she and I were on the road. Kind of an unofficial record, 2,629 nights in a row, nonstop, no home, working comedy. 7 years and change. And then got a job in radio, and like most people who work in radio, two kinds of people in radio: people who have been fired, people who are going to be fired. So I got fired, and then the comedy club boom had busted, but my act was clean. So I thought, I'll do corporate comedy after dinner, after lunch. And I discovered very quickly, people ask me, what's the difference between a club comic and a corporate comic? About $5,000 a day plus travel. I'm no math major, but yeah, so I rode that horse till the end of 2007, early 2008. And then the recession hit, and bookings dropped off 80% per night, and we lost everything in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And that's when I learned what the barrel of my gun tasted like.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert for the audience, I did not pull the trigger. I tell that story, and then I say, look, a friend of mine came up to me after a keynote recently. "Hey, man, how come you didn't pull the trigger?" "Hey, man, could you try to sound slightly less disappointed?" So anyway, the reason I didn't pull the trigger is in my first TEDx talk. That was the thing. When conferences came back, meeting planners said, "Frank, we love you. We just can't pay you $5,000 anymore just to be funny. You got to teach the audience something."
Absolutely.
What? So I read a book called The Message of You by Judy Carter. The Message of You. Turn your life into a money-making speaking career. Went into it thinking I got nothing. But halfway through, I thought, oh, yes, I do. given the fact that I live with 2 mental illnesses and I came close to killing myself, and depression and suicide run in my family, more nuts in my family than in a squirrel turd, I thought if I get some training in suicide prevention, I could keynote on it.
Yeah.
Not knowing what a big deal suicide is. And one person dies by suicide every 11 minutes in the US. And so I put together a keynote. Now, the reason I started doing TEDx talks, I'm a comic. Who's going to believe I can do anything serious? Mm-hmm. So my wife suggested TEDx talk. So I applied and I got my first one and actually came out as mentally ill. Nobody knew I was mentally ill until I came out of the mental health closet in that TEDx. And that led to two other events contacting me and saying, do you have any more, mental health topics? Yeah. So then I applied to 3. Then I applied for the next 4. And that makes 7. And the 8th one, I got contacted by a TEDx in India because I have a huge footprint on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn, sure, they focus a lot of their algorithm toward India. And they asked me if I would do a TEDx virtually. I did. And I just landed my 10th one in San Diego in July. And Bill Gates only has 8. So,
do you ever get people, I'm sure you do, Frank, I mean, people coming up to you after a TEDx saying, you really, I'm assuming you do, even though I hate to assume, you saved my life. I mean, you made it more recognizable. And the flip side of that, do you get people coming up to you, maybe you have, that say, I can't believe you're making light of mental health? What do you think?
Actually, a couple of things that work there. Yes, people come by afterwards. Matter of fact, when I keynote, I do general Q&A at the end. And before I do that, I go, look, if you have a question you want to ask or a story you want to share and you don't want to do it in front of everybody, hey, Frank, I'm crazy. Can you help me? I'll hang out another 45 minutes. And sometimes there's 2 people and sometimes 10 people lined up. Because what happens is when I go on stage and I'm vulnerable and I tell my story, especially as a guy, men don't generally talk about that kind of thing. It gives other people permission to give voice to these things. And most of the conversations start like this. I've never told anybody this.
Yeah.
Really? I get that a lot. If you're a comedian, the rule is you can make fun of any group to which you belong. If I was neurotypical or neuronormal, I could not get away with the stuff I get away with.
Oh, absolutely. That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, because I've experienced it. My favorite actually was a psychologist came up to me after my talk and he said, look, you're not a psychologist or psychiatrist. You're not even a therapist. What gives you permission, the right to talk about suicide prevention? And I said, because I can tell you what the barrel of my gun tastes like.
Yeah, you've been there.
And in the silence that followed, I said, look, here's the deal. I can go to school and learn absolutely everything you know. You will never know everything I know.
Good point.
And
what did he say?
Yeah.
He's like,
yeah.
Checkmate.
That's the thing. I've had, exactly. Mic drop. Had a young woman come up to me at a school in Virginia. I speak at colleges as well. And she goes, can I give you a hug? And I said, now, this is right in the middle of the Me Too movement. Everybody in the room's got a phone with a video camera. I can see the headline in the paper the next day. Speaker gropes co-ed. So I gave her a hug, but I pushed my pelvis back as far as I possibly could. You know how you do that with the.
Yeah.
And I said, after we finished, are you a hugger? She goes, no, I'm not a hugger. I go, what's with the hug? She goes, well, I've been in therapy for 2 years. And my therapist is good. She's got the diplomas on the wall. She knows her stuff. The problem is she has no context. She goes, 15 minutes into your talk, I'm thinking to myself, oh, dear God, he's inside my freaking head. She said, your 45 minutes did more for me than 2 years of therapy with her because there's that context. I understand. I hear the same music. I'm not going to judge. And so that's the power of.
But I think you hit something on there and I've had my own mental health challenges. I've gone through treatment. I've been suicidal. I had a gun to my head. I didn't put it in my mouth. I was like, hey, it might work better this way. But I think when you've been there, Frank, and you know this, when you've been in those positions, you've been in that dark hole, I think to try to explain that to somebody else who's never been there. They might have some challenges, but really in a dark fucking pit where they're about to kill themselves. I think there's a disconnect there. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Well, and when I speak, whether it's a TEDx or a keynote, part of it is for the 25% of the people in the room who undoubtedly have a mental health challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of it is for the 75% of the room that's neurotypical, that has trouble understanding how anybody can think that way. I get this. How could life be so bad you'd want to kill yourself? Well, here's the deal. In the majority of cases, the person who is suicidal does not want to kill themselves. They just want to end the pain.
Yeah.
I didn't want to kill myself. I just wanted to end the pain.
Yeah, good point.
So I do my best to decode. I was in Pensacola, Florida, doing my 4th TEDx. It's called Suicide, the Secret of My Success, Dead Man Talking, which is a whole nother story. But there were 2 women there, and they had been vacationing in Pensacola. They went on Google, things to do in Pensacola this weekend. The TEDx pops up, and they see suicide prevention speaker Frank King. So they came to this thing. They paid $95 a piece to come to this thing. And then, of course, that morning before we started, somebody said to me, "Are you going to leave when you get done speaking? Because you're in the first set of speakers." And I said, "No, I can't leave." And they said, "Why can't you leave?" I said, "When we break for lemonade and cookies, just watch what happens." And sure enough, we broke for lemonade and cookies. There were 8 people in line ready to talk to me. And they came up, and she said, "My brother was struggling, came to live with us. He was living with depression. I thought he was getting better. And then I came home from work one day and discovered he'd ended his life." And they were there simply for me to help them understand. And I said, "Look, I'm guessing he didn't want to die. I'm guessing that, like most of us, he just wanted to end the pain. But wasn't he thinking about the people he's going to leave behind?"
Yeah.
I said, "Look, one of the 3 legs of a 3-legged stool in suicide is something called burdensomeness. Most people who are going to kill themselves are thinking about the people they're leaving behind. They're actually thinking the world would be better off. These people would be better off if I were gone." So it's almost a selfless act, irrational. Yeah. But I knew my wife would be better off because I had $1 million life insurance policy. We just filed bankruptcy. She'd get $1 million tax free. She'd be heartbroken, but not broke. So I was thinking about, I thought I can solve this problem. I can restore her financially. So anyway, they do come up afterwards. And my because I have depression, which is common, I have something rare called chronic suicidal ideation, which means for me and people like me, the option of suicide is always on the menu as a solution for problems large and small. And I say to the audience, when I say small, my car broke down a couple of years ago. I had 3 thoughts. 1, get it fixed. 2, buy new. And 3, I could just kill myself. Jeez. They laugh. I go, I know it's absurd. But the upside of that is every time I've spoken since 2014, almost every time, there's been at least one person in the audience who has that. They don't know it has a name. They think they're just some kind of freak and completely alone. I did a college. Young woman came up afterwards. "Thanks for the keynote." "You're welcome." She said, "But I got to tell you, it made me weep." "I didn't make you weep." She said, "Your story about the car break, get it fixed, buy it." She goes, "I've been having those thoughts all my life. I didn't know that had a name.
Yeah.
I was just some kind of freak and completely alone. And when I heard you say that you have that, I realized first time in my life that I was not in fact alone, and I wept."
Well, how do you get past that, Frank? How do you get, so that's the return. So how do you get past that? If you personally, okay, you gave an example, a powerful example, your car breaks down. I have these options. One of them on the table is I'm going to kill myself. So how do you, and for the listener out there, I'm sure somebody listening might have the same thing going on in their head. Okay, it's always on the menu. I can order it and get it if I want to. Yep. How do you move past that? Because a lot of people view.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, because I had a young woman come up to me after a keynote in, I think, Cincinnati last year. And she said, "I've got that. Is there medication for that? Chronic suicidal ideation?" I said, "No." I said, "As a matter of fact, it's not in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the DSM-5.
Yeah.
I've mentioned that to clinicians, 20 years in the business, and they've stared at me like a pig at a wristwatch because they had no idea, they'd never heard of it."
Yeah.
I said, "But here's the deal. it's simply a coping mechanism. It's a way when things get tough, you get stressed, the problem seems insoluble. Your brain goes, wait a minute, we can fix this.
Here's a possible solution over here.
Yeah. So I said to her, you don't have to act on it just because a thought crossed your mind. It's just a way for your brain to cope. I said, B, if suicide truly is about pain, I believe that my chronic suicidal ideation keeps me alive because I made the decision a long time ago. I could kill myself at any moment. I've crossed that barrier. And so knowing that I can end the pain anytime I like allows me to stand a great deal more pain. So I think of it almost as a superpower.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That, it's
2 years
always...
ago we had there's a number 3 in there.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, 2 years ago we had wildfire, and in on the West Coast with wildfires, they have a 3-step. One, let's see, level 3 is get ready, level 2 is get set, level 1 is go. Get the hell out of the neighborhood. Don't look back because those wildfires move like that. So I'm downtown. It's level 3. I think, well, I got a doctor's appointment. I got plenty of time to get home in case we go to level 2. Because we had 9 or 10 rescue cats in the house. The dogs had already been sequestered at the boarding facility we used. So on my phone, the alert goes off. We went from level 3 to level 1 in a flash. And I'm like, and they're evacuating my neighborhood. But there are 9 cats, 10 at the time, cats in that house. And I'm thinking, there's no way I could live with myself if I thought there was a chance I could save them and didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I drove back in the neighborhood. There's nobody there. The fire is a mile and a quarter away. I can see it and smell it coming over
cats.
the hill. I'm inside. Huh?
Got to get the cats.
I'm inside stuffing cats. Got to get the cats. I'm stuffing cats in the carriers. By the way, I have a whole new respect for the phrase herding cats. Every time I stick one in, 2 jump out. So like, I finally get them loaded. Cage. Exactly. Get them in the car. And I made a video because I wasn't sure we're going to get out of the neighborhood. I wanted to make the video and then upload it, send it to my wife, text it to my wife, whatever, so she would know what happened. And a friend of mine said, you could have been killed. And I said, dude, I've been trying to do that to myself for decades. So, and then he said, you could burn alive. I go, no. If the flames were licking my toes, I've got a nickel-plated Ruger 38 with Hydroshock hollow points. I'm not going out in a fire. I'm taking the 38 Express out of town. But fortunately, the cats and I got out of the neighborhood. But I was in the video, I'm thinking about it, my wife and my sister, and I go, and her husband, my asshole brother-in-law. I said that, I'm a comic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, but that's so the young lady, back to the young lady. A, it's just a coping mechanism. B, you don't have to do anything about it. It's just the way your brain copes with stress.
Yeah, just options out there. I said,
yeah, just options. And for me, doing what I do for a living and having people come up like that young woman at the college, I was in Billings, Montana, at the University of Montana Billings. I'm standing at the curb. I've just done a show or performance. It's dusk, snowing. I can hear a river in the distance. Kids going to get the truck to pick me up, take me back. And I don't know if it was the snow and the river and the time of day, but I thought to myself, oh, you know what? I'm like George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life. I've been shown what these people's lives would be like if I weren't there simply to speak and reassure them they're not alone. And if I kill myself, I would undoubtedly take a lot of those people with me who never had a chance to hear me speak. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the reasons I don't kill myself.
Yeah.
Is, for them. A friend of mine said, you can't live with that? I go, no, dude, you missed the point. I can't die with that.
Yeah.
I can't die thinking I could have saved. I had a heart attack 1 week before my first TEDx. Saturday afternoon, I'm on the hill with the dogs, 3 dogs walking the trail by myself, and I had a heart attack. I've had 2 aortic valve replacements and a double bypass. And I realized it's a heart attack, and I'm a half mile from the car. And I got T-Mobile, so I don't have cell service. And so I got AT&T now. I'm not rolling those dice again. And I had to make it back to the car.
Yeah.
And people go, well, we know when you're having a heart attack, the heart muscle's dying. You are essentially dying. And what are you thinking going down the hill? Did you see a light, hear your dead relatives' voices, think about your wife? I go, you know what I'm doing? I'm crying because I'm thinking to myself, if I could have just lasted another week and gotten on stage at that TEDx and done my suicide prevention TEDx, how many lives I could have saved, and I'm not going to get the chance.
Yeah.
And B, we have 3 German Shepherd rescues, and the road we came in on, pulled off of to go walk, is a busy logging road where trucks are going back like this, you know, hell bent for leather all day long. And I know if I don't get the dog secure in the car, that it could end poorly for them. So my only goal is actually to get back to the car, get them loaded, door closed. If I drop that, then fine. We're like the Marines. We never leave anybody behind.
Yeah. And I love it because
I drive home. I get in the car. I drive home.
Go ahead, sir.
Go ahead.
No. I was just going to comment that
I drive home.
You're in it for the greater good. I mean, bigger than yourself, which I love and I admire. You know, you're looking at trying to save as many people and get your message across to as many people as possible, saying that I've been through this. This is not the answer. You know, your story is somebody else's script, right?
Yes.
I'm sorry I interrupted you, Frank.
So I drive 2 miles home. No, that's all right. Yeah, I drive 2 miles home. I thought I'll call 911. I thought, wait a minute, what if I dial 911, then collapse in the kitchen? And my wife comes out and I'm on the floor in the middle of the day in the kitchen. So I yelled at my wife, honey, dial 911. I'm having a heart attack. This is what I hear, Patrick. I'm in the bathroom. I got the fan on. I can't hear you. Are you shitting me?
She is.
I walked half a mile. Yeah, exactly. She opens the door, takes one look at my face, which she said was whiter than the Oscars, and called 911. I had a 25-minute ride to the emergency room. By the way, here's a little tip for you. When you show up at the hospital having heart attack symptoms, there's no waiting. They roll me right in.
Yeah, just fill out this questionnaire.
Yes. The nurse is there. I'm there. It's killing me. And she literally killing me. And she says, Frank, look, no paperwork, but I got to ask you one question. As a comedian, I said, when she said, I got to ask you one question, I said, honey, I'm married, but I love the way you. She's trying not to laugh. She goes, I know your full name is Frank Marshall King III, but what do you like to be called? Through the pain, I said, Big Daddy. To this day, when I go back to Oregon Heart and Vascular and I see somebody from that morning, hey, Big Daddy,
Big
how's
Daddy.
that? Yeah. So obviously I survived the heart attack.
Yeah.
But,
anyway, comedy is such it is a medicine, right, Frank? I mean, you've been doing this a long time. I mean, it is.
Yeah,
it is good for the soul.
Yeah, it's good for me, but it's better for the audience, I think, because if you and people have an idea in their mind what mental illness looks and sounds like, and they see me on stage, and I'm relatively high functioning, and I'm a comic, and I wrote for Leno, and it's just not exactly what they think of when they think of mental illness. Which changes the perceptions, which changes prejudices, and hopefully reduces the stigma of. There's a stigma with mental illness and a separate stigma for thoughts of suicide because it scares the immortal dog shit out of people. Yeah. And so me up there talking about in very blunt terms, I was on the campus at the Billings campus at University of Montana, and it was open to the public as well. So the 2 nice young men drive me around town to radio stations to promote the show because the public was invited. And they said to me, Frank, on college campuses nowadays, comedians have a tough time because people get their feelings hurt and they get their toe stepped on and, they get triggered. Are you worried about that? Because you're a comic. I said, look, if I was doing comedy, I'd be very careful. But I'm here doing a keynote on suicide prevention to save lives. So here's my philosophy. If you're at my event and I step on your toes, fuck you. I'm here to save lives.
Yeah, exactly. You can't sugarcoat this stuff.
Yeah.
And you're not going to make everybody happy. It's a touchy subject. You say, look, this is triggering, but why sugarcoat shit when you're talking about life and death?
Yeah. And that's the thing. There's a wives' tale, old wives' tale, that you should never mention the word suicide in front of somebody who is depressed. And I love the reasoning as a comedian because it might give them the idea. Suicide? What a great idea. Why didn't I think of that? Trust me, it crossed my mind. As a matter of fact,
go ahead, sir.
mentioning out loud makes the chances they'll die by suicide go down.
Because now you're focusing on it?
Yeah, because when you drag it out in the sunlight, and you make it a topic of conversation, and somehow that helps people make them less likely they'll do it. If that's part of the whole protocol.
Yeah.
If somebody says, I'm having thoughts of suicide, you say, do you have a plan? If they have a plan, it's detailed, time, place, method, you need to get them to a mental health facility. And if they're an immediate danger to themselves, you got to call 911 because, and bear in mind, if they may have been your friend before you did that, but they'll probably spend 3 days locked down in a mental health facility. And so they're going to unfriend you on Facebook, but at least they'll be alive.
Where do you think we're going? I mean, I know there's a lot of awareness out there, Frank. There's great people like you out there talking about it, bringing more awareness, education to it. Where do you think, and maybe this is a broad question, I don't care, I'm going to ask you anyway. Where do you think we're going as a nation with mental health and resources out there for people? I mean, are we ever going to see this lessen, or do you think it's going to just keep going and on and on, and the upticks and suicide and all kind of depression and all this other stuff going on? I know there's a lot of external, forces that come into that. But just, you've been doing this a long time. You're out there talking to millions of people. Where do you think we're going as a nation? We're going to see any relief in this? Any signs of getting better? Or just because every time you turn on, I mean, there's always, especially in the first responder community, not just first responders, but everywhere, people are killing themselves.
Yes. And when I started this in 2014 with my first TEDx, if you watch my first TEDx, I put a slide on the screen. Every year in the United States, 39,000 people die by suicide. Well, I just did it for the fire chiefs and police chiefs. I just did it, a keynote, and now that number is 48,000. It dipped a little bit during the pandemic, in part, they believe, because over 1 million more people reached out to the Suicide Prevention Lifeline during the pandemic than normally reach out during an average year. People just like, fuck it, I got to call somebody.
Yeah.
And so, and now in 2022, it went back up again, and we hit 48,000 instead of 47,000. So, and there are certain occupations that have a higher rate. And I speak to 6 of the top 10, the civilian occupations, 6 of the top 10 at-risk occupations. Number 1 is construction. 1,000 people die by accident every year in construction. 5,000 die by suicide. You're 5 times more likely to jump off the building than fall off, which is just ridiculous.
Wow.
And as you said, in the first responder community, one of my co-authors on a 4-book series on men's mental health teaches QPR, question, persuade, refer. It's a suicide prevention protocol to first responders, mostly men. And that's the reason we wrote the book, because she wanted to buy one of her first responders a book on men's mental health and couldn't find one. So she thought, well, there's a vacuum. So we were going to write one book. We figured we could probably get 12 guys, to create an anthology. We could probably get 12 guys if we pushed hard to be upfront about their struggles. Well, we ended up getting 60 guys. And so it ended up being 4 books. We had no idea, because it turns out men take advice from men, and men, if they've recovered, they like to help other men recover. And so, although I got to tell you, we sell more of those books to women because I think they've got a man in their life. They just can't figure out how to help with this. So it's a men's mental mechanics manual full of exercises and resources. And of course, the 12 stories in each book of how a guy is handling their issue.
And where can they find that, Frank?
Amazon,
where all good things come from.
Yes, Amazon. Yes. So the all 4 books are up on Amazon. The official title is Guts, Grit, and the Grind. Guts, Grit, and the Grind.
And that'll be
a mental mechanics manual.
Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about, let's shift a little bit, brother. You help people get prepared and help them get on TED Talks. How did you land into that? Obviously, you've been doing them for a long time. So now you're helping people.
Yep.
So talk a little bit about that for a few minutes.
Yeah, it actually was. I kept getting asked by people, "Hey man, you got X number of TEDx talks. Can you help me get one?" Friends of mine. So I'd help them. And another friend of mine who's a business coach, she said to me in a conversation, "You know what, Frank? I get the impression you're teaching people to get TEDx talks and not charging them." Now, bear in mind, she's a business coach. She goes, "That shit's got to stop."
Got to make some
turned
green.
Me on to a guy who built me. Yeah, she turned me on to a guy who built me a website, and I started charging. And I began with $3,997, $4,000, and then I bumped it to $5,000 and to $6,000. Now it's $7,500, and I also have a separate program for how to make money speaking, cruises, colleges, associations, also $7,500. But I realized that I had a skill set. It's kind of like being a card counter in a blackjack game in Vegas. You know, card counting is not illegal, but it's not really encouraged in Vegas. And what's happened is, because I'm so good at helping other people, because I'm so good at getting myself TEDx talks. Obviously, I've done 9. I got 10th one coming up this summer. I've figured out how to game the system, and TEDx is pissed. Wow. The last 5 TEDx's I've done, they won't post for that reason. Wow. They're mad because I keep getting one right after another, right after another, and you're not supposed to have more than 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm happy that they're unhappy, because it means,
well, you're doing.
It doesn't hurt my.
No, and you're doing it for a greater good.
Here's the irony. Yes. Here's the irony. They tell you in their written material, it's not about the person, it's all about the idea we're spreading. Well, if that's true, and my ideas we're spreading are saving lives, why are you not posting them? Who cares? Why do you care that I'm a speaker? Why does that matter to you? Why do you care that I've got 9 of them? If somebody, how many lives can we save if you publish those other 5?
Yeah, exactly.
Because I have people write me occasionally that, I thought I was alone, or I've always thought this, but I was never able to put it into words, and I saw your talk. So anyway, that's how I got into it. And what I realized was that the first hurdle in a TEDx application, they get a couple of hundred per event. So whatever you put on that application, the first couple of lines better be,
eye-catching, jumping.
Yeah, make them curious. They got to read on. And I discovered that when I did my 4th one, which was Suicide, the Secret of My Success, Dead Man Talking. The idea is I was married and miserable, selling insurance miserable, and I realized if I didn't start doing open mic nights, which is where I thought I belonged, my first wife didn't like that idea. That's why I was not doing it. She's a wonderful woman, but she did not like the idea of me doing open mic nights. I thought, if I don't start doing comedy, I'm going to kill myself sooner rather than later. And my second thought was, well, wait a minute. I could divorce my wife, quit my job, try comedy. If it works, great. If it doesn't, hell, I can still kill myself. And that was the premise.
Yeah.
And that's how I got into comedy. I mean, think about this. What's more powerful on this planet than somebody with absolutely nothing to lose? Absolutely. I mean, if I stayed put, I'm dead. Yeah. What the hell? So, and they liked the title, subtitle, and the idea so much, I didn't have to audition. That told me that you've got to get their attention with that title, subtitle, elevator pitch. The next one, my 5th one, my favorite, the only one I've ever gotten standing ovation for, was Mental Health and the Orgasm. Treat your depression single-handedly. And again, they called and said, "No, you don't have to audition, Chief. You're on.
You're good. You're good."
Right? Yeah. And the first line of it is, mental health and the orgasm. Treat your depression single-handedly. The first line is, "I love my iPhone, but I got to tell you, it is my second favorite handheld device." And from that point on, they're howling. And the last joke that got me the standing ovation, and my wife said, "Don't do it." I said, "I'm going to do it. It's going to kill." I said to them, do you know why they call an orgasm an orgasm? And they're like, no. I said, because nobody gets spelled standing O.
Standing
And
O.
sadly, yeah, exactly. Sadly, that was the first one they didn't publish. They didn't publish it. They didn't put it up on YouTube. And they would. I said, look, edit it any way you like. Nope.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't understand at the time. They were upset because I was doing so many.
Yeah.
Well, when I realized what was happening and that they'd never post another one, I did a virtual one during the pandemic, which of course I have a copy of because I recorded it on my laptop. The next one, I donated a videographer to the event so they'd have another camera angle. And I said, well, I'll have them give you the raw footage on everybody, make everybody's video just that much better. What I didn't say was that way I'm paying the videographer. I'm getting a bootleg copy. Yeah. So I'll have proof I was there. I can't put it on YouTube, but I can use it for marketing and Vimeo. And when I went to Canada, I hired a videographer and, and I gave him a third camera angle and I got a copy.
That's amazing.
So, yeah.
That's awesome. Frank, if people want to reach out to you, brother, you're all over the internet, but what's the easiest way to find your material? Obviously YouTube. Is there any central location they can find out more about you and maybe book you for a speech?
Are you're on your computer right now?
Yes, sir.
Can you open another browser window and still have me on the screen?
I think I can. I can do that. It's technology, Frank. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Just type in the mental health comedian. The mental health comedian. Okay. That's my brand.
I got it, brother.
And so if they type in, if they type in the mental health comedian, there should be. I mean, hopefully, there are lots of listings for me with that.
Oh yeah,
search,
I got it. I got it right here. That's going to be linked up in the show notes. And lastly,
that's the best way. That's my. Yeah. No.
If somebody's out there struggling right now, Frank, what advice would you give them? I mean, thinking about suicide, contemplating suicide, severely depressed, what would you give them? Advice from Frank, the king.
First, I would have them get a mental health evaluation, simply an evaluation. Find out if it's just garden variety depression. Is it a depressive state of bipolar disorder? Is it, what is it? B, I would recommend that if the medication they receive, if they're taking it now and it's not working or not working well, there's a DNA cheek swab test. They take your DNA like Ancestry and they try to match your DNA with the psychotropic that would work best with your metabolism. Mm-hmm. It's a couple $100. A lot of insurance covers it, especially if the doctor writes you a prescription for it. And it narrows a list of psychotropics down to just a couple that will work well with your metabolism. So there's not so much experimentation.
Yeah.
3, I would have a physical, because oftentimes physical ailments present as mental health symptoms. And so those 3 things. And lastly, I would tell anybody that love, and trust what you're going through so they can be there for you.
Absolutely.
So you tell them, look, here's what I'm dealing with. Here's what you can do to help if I crash and burn. And there's a new 988, new 3-digit number, 988 for the Suicide Prevention Lifeline and text line, same line, 988. Call 9 if you're having these struggles, call 988, especially before you step out on the ledge.
Yeah.
Call them as you're rolling up to that.
Yeah.
And the volunteer will do their best to help you, deal with whatever you're dealing with.
Yeah, reach out. Frank King, you are amazing, my friend. Thank you so much for being on the show. Everything we talked about, folks, is going to be linked up in the show notes. Frank King, thank you so much, brother. Take care.
And Patrick, if you'll put my phone number, my cell phone number in the show notes.
Oh, go ahead. What is it, sir? Go ahead,
858.
858.
858. Yeah, 405.
405.
5653. Yeah, 405-5653. Yeah, and here's what I tell the audience. Look, if you're suicidal, call 988. If you're just having a really bad day, call the crazy person. Here's my cell. And about once every couple of weeks, somebody calls.
Yeah, that's amazing, Frank. Giving out your personal cell, brother. Thank you so much, my friend.
Hey, look,
you're amazing.
My goal is to save a life a day.
Absolutely. That's my goal, too. I have it in a little light up placard here. Help one today. One today. That's what matters.
Yes.
All right, brother. Take care, Frank.
In honor of those who are gone.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.